Hi, fourth grade friends. Today we're going to take a look at some math together. This is the blue pages in your learning packet for this week. They're pages 109 and 110. And I'm hoping that this is all looking familiar to you. This is going to be a review of what we've been talking about in Unit 5, which we started before we had to go home. Before we get started, I want to just go over our class norms again real fast. Even though we're distance learning, we can still have some norms. So during this time, we're going to try and be positive. We're going to be respectful of those around us, whether that's family members or anybody else who we're interacting with during this time. We're going to keep trying in our work, even in those moments where it's hard. And we're going to try and remember the word yet. And so if you're finding that you aren't understanding a concept yet, that we can say, I'm having trouble with this, I don't understand it yet, but that in the future there's a chance for us to understand it, especially if you get some help from your parents or from myself or Mrs. Schaefer. Also, before we start with today's review, I do want to just take a second. I know I've been in front of a computer a lot today. I'm feeling a little just kind of and I know that some of you might be feeling that way too. So before we get started, I just want to make sure that we're in the right mindset for learning. I'm checking out my posture right now. My back is straight. I'm going to take a deep breath and just get my mind in the place where it needs to be before I start my work. All right, let's get started. So this first question that I want to look at is on page 109, and it's question number 2. And question number 2 says to circle the polygons in the box below. And you've got a box with 6 different shapes in it. And before we went home, one of the things that we reviewed were the 3 traits or aspects that a polygon has. So I wanted to review those with you today. A polygon has 3 things that make it a polygon. The first thing is that a polygon has to be a flat or 2-dimensional shape. Things like cubes are not polygons because they are in 3 dimensions, not 2. The second thing that we need to remember about polygons is that they are closed, that there aren't any gaps or holes in them. And then the third thing we need to remember about polygons is that there are 3 or more line segments that make up a polygon. So I've got my trusty little whiteboard and just going to do a quick review on some of these ideas. Start with so I've drawn a little rectangle right here. Right now this is a polygon. It's flat. It's got no gaps in it, or no holes, and that it's got at least 3 line segments making it up. And right now I'm changing something about this. I'm not going to tell you what, but I've changed something about it so it's no longer a polygon. I want you to think about what I just did to make this no longer be a polygon. I'll give you a second to think about that. And yeah, this isn't a polygon anymore because it now has this gap right on this side. And so that is no longer a polygon. One more I want to review with you real fast. This one gets some students. So I have this shape right here. It's a circle-ish. It is flat. There aren't any gaps or holes in it. But there's something about this circle that makes it, well, not just this circle, but all circles, that makes the circle not a polygon. I'll give you a second to think about what that is. Yeah, it doesn't have 3 or more line segments. It's just one single continuous curve that makes this shape. All right, so that is question 2. I want to go on to page 110. And on page 110, questions number 6 and number 7 are story problems. I want to give you guys a quick reminder on story problems. First thing is, when we're solving a story problem, what we need to do is we need to look at all the information, think about what's important and what's not important. And the other tip I want to give you when you're solving a story problem is sometimes the best strategy is to draw it out. So looking at question number 6, an ant walked around a rectangular garden. One side of the garden was 16 feet long, the other side was 23 feet long. So before I even look at any of the questions, I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to draw that on my whiteboard. Got a rectangular garden right here. I'm going to then label the sides. One side of the garden was 16 feet, and the other side was 23 feet long. So we've got our garden right here, and question A is saying, how far did the ant walk, or what is the perimeter of the garden? Reminder, when we're finding the perimeter, we're finding the sum of all of the sides, the length of all of the sides. So if I know that this side is 16 feet, and this is a rectangle, I know that this side is also going to be 16 feet. And then the same with the top and the bottom. If I know the bottom of this rectangle is 23 feet long, I know that the top is also going to be 23 feet long. So you can take it from there. I'm finding the sum of all of those sides added together, and that's how we find perimeter with a rectangle. The other thing to think about is when we're trying to find the area. Now, what some students are going to want to do is they remember that with area we need to do some multiplying, and if they see the 16 and the 16, this 23 and this 23, they're going to try and multiply all of those together. I want to remind you that when you're finding area for a rectangle, you're going to multiply one side by the other. So I've brought our rectangle back to where we started with. We've got 16 feet on this side and 23 feet on this length. To find the area, I'm going to need to multiply those together. So my equation will be 16 times 23. And like the problem we were looking at last week, 16 times 23, that's going to be pretty tricky for some of you to do. If you're having trouble thinking about a strategy on how you could solve that, I want to encourage you to go look at last week's video where we were looking at area in that as well. And I showed you an example of how you can break up a big multiplication problem like that into smaller, more easier to manage chunks. The last thing I want to look at is with the last question. It's labeled as a challenge question, although I will really encourage you. These challenge problems are super important because these are the kind of questions that we want to be able to answer at the end of a unit like we are right now. And it says, Clover is mowing her backyard. Her backyard is a rectangle. One side is 60 feet long, the other side is 25 feet long. It took Clover 30 minutes to mow half of her backyard. What is the area of the space that Clover mowed? Now with a big story problem like this, I'm going to be thinking about all the numbers that it gave me. I'm going to do a drawing or a sketch of the problem. And I'm also going to be thinking about, is there some information that I don't need? So let's draw another rectangle. And we've got one side is 60 feet long, and the other is 25. So I've got that modeled right here on my whiteboard. This side is 25 feet long, this side is 60. And it says that it took Clover 30 minutes to mow half of her backyard. And I know that sometimes in the past we've had problems with extra information. So I'm wondering if we even need that bit of information. What do you think? How would we show that on our model? And yeah, there's no way that we would show that it took her 30 minutes to mow. That's one of those tricks that sometimes get thrown into questions to make sure that we're thinking about all of our numbers correctly. So we don't need to worry about that. We've already reviewed how to find the area of a rectangle. So I'm hoping that at this point, you're thinking about how Clover is trying to find the area, but she's only trying to find the area of half her our backyard. So maybe you start by doing the area formula for this rectangle and then dividing that in half. Maybe you've got a different strategy on how you can solve that. If you have any further questions, please feel free to reach out to me or Mrs. Schaefer. I hope this video was helpful for you. It's a gorgeous spring day out here in Bellingham, so I hope that you guys are also getting a chance to get outside and enjoy the sun today. Have a good day. Bye.